please start with the roll call.
Yes, Mayor Coombs?
Here.
Council members Bagley?
Here.
Christensen?
Here.
Finley?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Peck?
Here.
Santos?
Here.
Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at first call, public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their name on that list will have an opportunity to speak during the public hearing items this evening or at final call, public invited to be heard on any of the items at the end of the meeting. Valerie, are there any agenda revisions?
Mayor Coombs, there was a mistake in item 6A, which is the Family Week proclamation. It was in the communication. You've been invited to a dinner being hosted by Children, Youth, and Families at the Senior Center on Friday the 20th from 6 to 8:30, and I believe it said the 21st in the communication. So
Okay.
just wanted to correct that.
Friday the 20th. Okay. Thank you. Okay. City Manager, is there a report from the City Manager?
Yes, Dale Rademacher is going to give a brief update on Sunset Bridge.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Mayor Combs and members of council, I'm Dale Rademacher, General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources. And yeah, finally, it's an opportunity to give you guys some good news with regards to Sunset Street Bridge. I wanted to let the council know that we have made an award of the contract to Flatiron Contractors. The contract award amount is $3,428,657. The funding for the project, 83% of that funding comes from the Federal Highway Authority, and the remaining local costs are split between the state, Boulder County, and the city of Longmont. So I believe the city share is going to be something around 8%. So you can think of us 8 cents on the dollar. We're getting a pretty good deal, I think, financially. The construction is scheduled to begin the week of November 30th, so right after Thanksgiving. The bridge should take about 6 months to build, should be reopened by May of 2016. During the construction, we will close down even the pedestrian, obviously the pedestrian and the bicycle crossing will be difficult when there's no bridge there. So we're going to be shutting that down and rerouting them down the Greenway down to Boston Avenue to cross. Just to give council a sense of the scope of the project, so the current bridge, or the original bridge, was about 90 feet long and 30 feet wide. The new bridge is going to be 220 feet wide. Not wide, 220 feet long and 50 feet wide. We messed that up. This is one of the first projects coming out of the Resilient St. Vrain on the overall flood recovery and rebuilding of the St. Vrain channel through our community. And so I think this really does represent one of the long-term commitments that the city has made in partnership with CDOT and the Federal Highway Authority in Boulder County. I will say this project, from September of 2013 to now has taken a long, long time. And I know a lot of folks, including myself, are frustrated that it's taken this time. But the time that we took to negotiate, which frankly took a long time with the Federal Highway Authority, to convince them of the need to not simply build back what was there, but to build back what will protect us, took a lot of time. And I do believe in the long run it'll be time that's well spent. And frankly, I look forward to the bridge reopening and maybe having a little dedication ceremony out there with the council next May. So if you have any questions, I can answer those. We will be posting photographs of the project as it goes forward on social media and on the city's website, so people in the public can watch as it, safely watch as the project gets rebuilt. I will also say while I'm here tonight as well that we're about to, you maybe have noticed that construction is getting underway in a few areas on Main Street. I don't know if you've noticed that, but So that work is ongoing, and we really have got to get those southbound lanes paved all the way down to the bridge. And so we're really fortunate we didn't have a blizzard here last night, because now we're going to be able to resume paving, get underway with that as early as Friday, hopefully complete it up on Saturday. And work is already beginning on the bridge work as well. That work is going on in the channel on the Main Street Bridge. And so both of these bridges will be going under construction at the same time, which is what we have been telling you all. And Sunset is going to go a lot quicker and a lot easier than Main Street, though, because we're keeping Main Street open as we rebuild the bridge. So it's actually good that Sunset is closed right now, at least for the sake of cost and the sake of expediency of rebuilding it. So if you have any questions, I can take those. Otherwise, I'll let you get to your meeting.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Could you repeat how wide the bridge is going to be? I didn't catch that.
You want me to do it right this time? It is 220 feet long and 50 feet wide, and that width, that extra width, is to allow for really nice sidewalks and pedestrian crossings of the bridge, which we really didn't have before. I'll also say that this bridge will pass the new 14 to 15,000 CFS flood flow. That was another reason. I don't want to have excuses on why this thing took so long, but trust me, there was so many changes and so much dynamic going on with regards to flow rates and federal funding that we learned a lot. We've learned so much I don't want to ever do it again, but we've learned about it. So,
Will there be bike lanes painted on the pavement too, or?
yes,
Okay,
I mean,
great.
it's going to have everything as far as the width of it, so that we can really accommodate it. That is really a busy pedestrian and biking corridor through the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited. All right. So we now have a proclamation designating November 22nd through the 28th as Family Week. And I'll go ahead and read this proclamation. And the Robles family, on behalf of the children, youth, and families, are here to accept the proclamation. So I'll go ahead and read. A proclamation designating November 22nd through the 28th, 2015, as Family Week in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas Longmont recognizes strong families are at the center of strong communities, and whereas everyone has a role to play in making families successful, including neighborhood organizations, businesses, nonprofit agencies, government, and of course families themselves, and whereas the experience of growing up in a secure, loving family environment helps individuals develop talents that contribute to better citizenships and service in our communities, and whereas Thanksgiving Week is a time to honor the importance of families and recognize the special connections that support and strengthen families year-round, and whereas in honoring the importance of families, we recommit ourselves to enhance and extend all the connections that strengthen and enrich families. Now, therefore, I, Dennis L. Coombs, Mayor, by the virtue of the authority vested in me in the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim November 22nd through 28th, 2015, as Family Week in Longmont. I invite all citizens in the community to acknowledge the significance of the family to the health of our community. So thank you. Would you like to say anything at the podium? Or?
Mayor Coombs, your next item is an update on South Main Station redevelopment project, and David Stearns will start this off.
All right.
Stand it up. Oh, no. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. David Starnes, Redevelopment Manager. Tonight, we want to provide you with an update on the Butterball redevelopment, also known as the first phase South Main Station. I'll have a brief few remarks and we'll turn the presentation over to Brian Baer, who's a representative from the development team, to provide us some additional information. So just a bit of a background. In March 2015, City Council passed Resolution R 2015-13, which approved a redevelopment and reimbursement agreement among the City of Longmont, the Longmont Downtown Development Authority, and PFP Longmont Holdings 1 LLC, the developer, in order to create a public-private partnership to redevelop 150 Main Street and adjoining property. Significant progress has been made in redevelopment to date. Whibby Brewing undertook an extensive renovation of the former Butterball warehouse just north of 150 Main and opened in early fall and is enjoying tremendous success. The owner demolished the former Butterball plant in early spring and summer. The owner has submitted their site plan for 150 Main Street and is currently in site plan review. While the owner has met several benchmark milestones that outline the agreement, due to the complexities of this infill development, such as the required environmental remediation, designing a larger project than originally planned, and planning and design for impact on adjacent streets and the railroad, which require third-party site plan approval, the owner has experienced a number of delays which have caused him to be unable to meet certain upcoming benchmark deadlines by end of the year. So in order to reflect a more realistic timeline for completion of the redevelopment of 150 Main Street, the parties desire to extend those benchmark deadlines for completion of the project. This request for an amendment to the ROA will be on your upcoming December 1st council session. I would like to now turn over the presentation to Brian, who can provide additional information on the project and update to date, and we would be happy to answer any questions after this presentation. And I'll bring up a PowerPoint here.
Let's see. Good evening, Brian Baer with 150 Main, Mayor, Council. Thank you for listening tonight. I think the last time I was here to give you an update was, I think, in the early summer. So okay. A lot's happened since then. I've got just a few slides I wanted to show you. As David mentioned, we've made a lot of progress in the last 6 months. One thing I will point out is in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, my branding folks keep telling me to stop calling it Butterball. For those of us who've been around a long time, it's kind of a nostalgic thing, but the name of the project is South Main Station, and we're branding it as such, and so we're pretty excited about that. And looking forward to getting started on the construction. So let me give you a quick update here. As soon as I figure this out. Milestones. David mentioned some of these. I'll go through them real quick. This one, the first one he didn't mention, which is part of our overall vision that I've been talking about for the last 2 years to everybody, that not just the main plant property, 150 Main, but all the properties around it. We're really starting to get some traction there with the Whibby Brewing building. Whibby's now open. All of you probably know that. It's been very successful for the last few months and pretty exciting. They draw a good crowd, and they've been doing a lot of great things. I guess they're going to start having more and more events, which will be nice, and that's helping to just start to activate the area. As David mentioned, the plant's been demolished. We're in with our submittal for Phase 1. That's been an interesting process. We actually increased the size of the project. Originally, we were only going to do about 2/3 of the site in the first phase, and then this piece along Emory was going to be Phase 2. And in the summer, we decided to do it all at once. So the whole block will now be developed and built in one phase. And that's 314 units with about 9,300 square feet of commercial along Main Street. I'm happy to say that 50% of the commercial is already under LOI and being negotiated with leases. Can't say who it is, but I think everybody will be pretty happy with the tenants that are going to be there. So that's exciting. We've also designed the enhanced recreation corridor along 2nd Avenue, which will connect to the greater system throughout the city, which is kind of neat and will help, again, activate the area. We completed the TAP agreement, the development reimbursement agreement, as David mentioned. One other surprise that actually has been a big surprise, is once we got all the buildings down and got a lot of the foundation systems out, which a lot of that stuff you can't really predict. It's been there, for 50 years, and this is quite common around Denver, but we don't see it up in this area. Back in the 60s and 70s, in the early part of the 80s, when they built buildings, they brought in fill dirt from different parts of the state, and some of that fill dirt has coal ash in it. And coal ash has levels of arsenic, sometimes greater than what the EPA and some of the local authorities will allow. Some of the foundation systems that were put in, the fill dirt under the Butterball buildings, had that coal ash. And so that's what you're seeing out there today. All those tractors rolling is the cleanup of that coal ash. And so as of yesterday, the cleanup was completed. And so basically it amounts to scraping the top layer, pulling it out, hauling it off and disposing of it, putting the top layer back over, and you're good to go. And so that set us back a few months as well, and a few dollars. But we're pretty much past it now, and so ready to move forward. We've also secured the construction debt for Phase 1, commitment from a local bank, and finalizing that. So that's exciting as well. In the last slide, I sort of mentioned some of these, but there's a couple of other things that have been challenging and have delayed us a bit. Xcel Energy, that's probably a very difficult, that was a difficult experience this summer. It took them 5 months to disconnect one gas line for us, and that one gas line prevented us from knocking down the old water treatment plant. So you notice that everything went down except for that. That was the reason. We also found some deep foundations and some what I call subterranean surprises. There were columns, foundation systems that were 3 and 4 feet in diameter that went down, 20, 30 feet. So it was kind of a surprise, but we were able to get those out, and it just took a little longer than we thought. We also made some changes with our civil engineer along the way. That delayed us. Another thing that's ongoing right now that is a little bit of an unknown, and that's one of the reasons why we're asking for the extension of some of our timelines. The First and Emory intersection is being redesigned. I know you know that, and they're going through a PUC process. That has not been finalized, so we're parallel tracking our plan with that. We fully intend that gets approved and moves forward, but that potentially could slow us down. The TAP agreement was delayed a little bit just because we needed to know the size of Phase 1 to be able to allocate the TAP credits. And since we changed Phase 1 and made it larger, so all these things kind of work in concert. And as I mentioned, the contamination and the VCUP process, we're actually going through a voluntary cleanup process with the state for that contaminated soil that we found. So bottom line is we're about 4 to 6 months behind where we thought we'd be. When I addressed you in the spring, we had a schedule, and we're about 4 to 6 months behind that schedule. But we are hoping that we will get out of the ground in the first quarter or early second quarter of next year. Okay. So if there's any questions, be happy to answer.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Have you had any delays due to our processes at Development Services, or have things gone smoothly there?
They've gone fairly smooth. It's a two-way dance there. We have to submit on time, and staff has to respond on time. We've been slowed down a bit by the change of our civil engineer and the changing of the project size. So I would say some of those delays were probably due to us more than anything. But as with a large project, a lot of people focused on it, and so it never goes as smooth as you want to, but staff's been great, and we just continue to work through the problems and the challenges that we have.
Councilmember Peck.
Have you applied for any of the building permits, or do you need to work through these changes in order to do that?
We have not applied yet. We need to get our final site plan approval and our PIP, Public Improvement Plan approval, done, and we're hoping that will happen before the end of the year. Then in January, we plan to submit for the building permit.
So what timeline are you looking at to have one of those buildings completed?
Well, if we stayed on the current schedule, which has us starting construction probably in the March-ish time frame, we're looking at late spring of 2017. So
Okay.
the first buildings will be delivered in about 12 months after the start, 12 to 14 months after the start.
Okay, great.
Well, no questions, but just a comment. It seems like Whibby Brewing is doing quite well. They're great at marketing. They're building social capital. They're having some fun, great events for fundraising. I think you got an excellent tenant there, so
Yeah,
congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was part of the original vision that I presented to all of you a couple of years ago. You either wanted a winery there or a brewery there.
Yeah.
And I think a brewery fits better.
Yeah.
And
I think the fact that they're doing lagers instead of ales makes them kind of a niche brewery.
There's definitely a buzz about them, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Real quick, just a couple of images, because I know I'm running over.
Sure.
This is a new image that kind of gives you a sense of the, I thought this had a pointer, but maybe it doesn't. It won't show on the screen. It won't show on the screen. It kind of gives you a sense of that corner starting to develop with Whibby Brewing. Whoops. With Whibby Brewing. And then in a month or two, we're going to bring in some concept ideas for the old granary building. We're going through some design with our architects for that, the little yellow building, rehabbing that, and rehabbing the granary building, which is the sort of second phase of phase one. So that's coming together. And then this gives you a good idea of sort of the massing of the buildings and how it's going to start to take shape as we tackle this whole area. As you know, 5 buildings. 314 units. The site plan hasn't changed very much since the last time we talked. This is another good shot. This is sort of looking south. If you were hovering over 3rd Main in a helicopter and looking down, this kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to look like in the massing down there at 2nd and Main. And then these are some of the elevations of what it's going to look like along, lower left is along Main Street. Right side is 2nd Avenue, and then the top one is sort of the entrance off Kimbark. That's all.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
Brian. Any further questions? Oh, Councilmember Peck?
Just out of curiosity, on the south side, that building, I forget what number building it was, but that train sits there at 2 and 3 in the morning, or sometimes all night, running, just sitting there with its engines revving. Is that going to be a problem for your tenants?
Well, you can see on this that we've built some parking structures right there. You can see the train sitting there, those the two cars. For some people it will be a problem. For some people it won't. I live near the train just off on the south side of town, and I've gotten used to it. I like it. So.
But this train doesn't move. It sits there.
It sits there and rumbles.
It does for hours.
Some people will hate it. Some people can't sleep without it. So, we studied a lot of projects up in Fort Collins and along the tracks through Louisville and down in Denver, and there are a number of areas where the trains kind of sit there and roll through real slow, and we just don't see a problem with it. The bigger issue is the whistle. And so we're really trying to work hard to become quiet zone so that goes away.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So now we have first call, public invited to be heard. And Suzanne Levy is...
Thank you, Mayor Coombs, members of the council. Good evening. My name is Susan Levy, and I am the Executive Director of the Boulder Valley Women's Health Center. I am here tonight to support the Human Services Agency funding recommendations and to thank the City Council for your support. Women's Health at Longmont has had a very successful year providing health care to low-income and uninsured women and teens. As of September, serving almost 1,000 patients, a 9% increase over last year. The Affordable Care Act has had a huge impact on our patient population, resulting in many more of our patients with health care access to health care insurance, both Medicaid and private insurance. But still, 40% of our patient population is uninsured or unable to use their insurance because of confidentiality concerns. And for those patients, we can continue to subsidize the cost of those services here in Longmont that help prevent unintended pregnancy and educates teens in the St. Vrain Valley School District with comprehensive sexuality education. Last school year, 2,250 students received medically accurate and inclusive sexual health education from Women's Health. And because of the services that we provide, Boulder County's birth rate for teens aged 15 to 19 decreased by 48% between 2009 and 2014. Much of this decrease happened in Longmont, where 64% of the Boulder County teen births occur. This means that more teens will be able to complete their education and form stable relationships prior to starting a family. And we will continue to help women and teens stay in control of their reproductive lives, thanks to you all. I am also the chair of the Human Services Alliance. This is a group that is composed of 70 human service agencies in Boulder County who receive any kind of local government funding. We would also like to thank you for supporting a strong safety net of services for your community. We are grateful that you understand and value the importance of maintaining comprehensive services for your constituents. And lest you think that only poor people access services via the safety net, let me remind you that the safety net exists for all people in Longmont, regardless of income. Any family may need access to critical services such as help for a mentally ill relative or for a teen with a substance abuse problem. The safety net exists to help all who require a helping hand and helps Longmont remain the compassionate, friendly community that it is. So again, my thanks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for coming here and thanking us and the human services people and thank you for all that you do for our community.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Georgetta Johnson.
Johnston. Good evening, Mayor and Council. And my name is Georgetta Johnston, and I live at 619 Kimbark Street, Longmont here. And our landlord called last Sunday and said he wants us out in a month. So my husband isn't really feeling well today, and this is very stressful, especially on somebody that is having health problems like he is. But I feel like that somewhere, somehow, we have tried to work with everybody here in the town, and my husband's been on, for the last 30 years, has been on the board, on the housing and the police. He was there as a chaplain. Besides the schools that we've done, we've been a part of the whole town. And I feel like somewhere, somehow, there's got to be help for us. And we aren't people that can live in a one-bedroom house. So it isn't like we can't pay. It's like we haven't been able to find something. And I just feel like some way, somehow, there's got to be an answer for this. And we're not old, but we're getting older. And we're important. We've put a lot into this city, this wonderful city that we feel like that is a good city to live in. So I'm trusting that something's going to work out. And, it would be embarrassing, hurting, and very upsetting for us to have to come to different unkind things. So he's been real nice working since May, but he said he sold it now. So I'm believing something's going to come out. And like I said, it isn't like we haven't been working and checking and seeing. And it seems like to me in ways that certain things aren't just getting worked out like they should. But I appreciate you letting me come and talk to you. And I feel like we're a good town. And we should be able to work something out for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of public invited to be heard.
Mayor Coombs, your first item on second reading and public hearings are two ordinances, ordinance 2015-59 and 60. 2015-59 is a bill for an ordinance repealing and reenacting Chapter 16.32 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting by reference the 2015 edition of the International Fire Code. And ordinance 2015-60 is a bill for an ordinance repealing and reenacting Chapters 16.04, 16.06, 1612, 1614, 1616, 1620, 1622, and 1640 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting by reference the 2015 edition of the International Building, Residential, Mechanical, Fuel, Gas, Plumbing, Property Maintenance, Energy Conservation, and existing building codes. And Chris Allison is here to make the presentation on these.
Oh, there we go.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and members of council. I'm Chris Allison, the building official. With what Valeria just read, I thought maybe I would read page by page out of the. No. So, since we've pretty much gone over everything, I don't have any additional presentation. Basically, here to answer any questions if there are still some questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Good code. Good code.
Councilmember Christensen.
I have a question about when it says the fiscal impact, it says that it is not applicable, but some of these things will actually cost a lot more to for housing to be built with the new code.
And that's true. I think that for the most part, though, it's kind of unrealistic for us to try to put a dollar amount to each individual item. So typically that's what's put in there. So I'm sorry I didn't get more creative.
That's okay. I thought I'd sort of point that out. I also have a question with page 15. We're being asked to decide whether this has to do with the requirement for sprinkling being put off until 2019. And we're being asked to either adopt the code as written, delete it in its entirety, or provide exceptions to exclude either detached single-family dwellings or both attached and detached single-family dwellings. Is that correct?
Those are definitely options.
Oh, okay.
When we met with the contractors, it was chosen then at that point to postpone that adoption until 2019. So what that does, it coincides with the next code cycle, which will be 2018.
Okay. So then we can decide it then.
Exactly.
Okay.
So just like the 2012 gave us till January of 2016 to either get a new code adopted or to modify that, that's what the next code cycle will give us.
Oh, never mind. I just reread it and understood what I previously did not understand. Thank you.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. If I'm not mistaken, the fiscal impact, and this really isn't a question for you, Chris, but for the city manager and other members of staff, the fiscal impact and fund source recommendation action, that's basically from the city's point of view. I've always, when that was instituted back in 2008, end of 2007, end of 2008, when Councilmember Banker asked for that, I believe that's what it's an impact on which fund it's going to have exactly, on which, that's just for clarification.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I was just going to say thanks. A lot of the reason why there's not discussion going on is because many of us met with our very, very, very special Michelle Goldman, who sat down and walked through our questions and all that stuff. So thank you very much, Michelle, for doing that. And so no questions, just a big thank you. Looks good.
Just a quick question. I could probably should have just called ahead, but when you said the clarification of a current amendment which allows Group A occupancies, restaurant occupancies, when expanding or moving to a location of less than 25,000 or 2,500 square feet, having occupancy less than 100 persons in a public area, used and equipped throughout with fire detection system. So what basically needed clarification in that old amendment? What was wrong with how?
So, Mayor Coombs, what we did was, it was kind of to help the downtown area to develop without having to put suppression into all of those buildings, because the Class A building or a Group A occupancy typically requires a suppression system. And so what we're doing is we're saying, if it's not more than 2,500 square feet, not more than 100 occupants, if they just do an alarm system in there, a monitored alarm, then we're just saying that that's fine instead of doing the suppression system.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember, nope. I guess that's it. No more questions. Thank you.
Mayor Coombs, if I could just add, as you know, the city of Longmont is known around the state for exceptional public involvement processes, and this process has been no exception with Chris, Michelle, Jeremy, Joni, others, meeting with contractors, meeting with builders, meeting with all sorts of folks in the development community. And so one reason why you don't see folks here tonight is because they have done a lot of outreach and really come up with some very reasonable exceptions and additions and amendments to the codes. And so I think that it's a real credit to the staff and the work that they've done working with the private sector.
Thank you, because otherwise this would be a pretty long meeting tonight. If you hadn't done that, we would be probably having a half a dozen people wanting to talk. So thank you. All right. I'm going to open up the public to this. Is there any for the public who'd like to speak on ordinance 2015-59 or 20 or 60? Public hearing on both of them. Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. And Chris, Michelle, and Jeremy, thank you for scheduling time with the members of council and getting us to understand what the changes are going to be. So I move ordinance 2015-59.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0. Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move ordinance 2015-60.
Second. All right, that's been moved and seconded. We've got to wait till we clear it. Okay, now we got it. Let's vote. And that passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, next on your agenda is the consent agenda. Item 9A is ordinance 2015-63, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 14.42 of the Longmont Municipal Code on art in public places. Public hearing and second reading for this is scheduled December 1st, 2015. Item 9B is resolution. There are two resolutions, 94 and 95. Resolution R 2015-94 approves the Second Amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement between the City and State of Colorado for a Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Housing Grant Agreement for house repairs. The second one is Resolution 2015-95 approving the Second Amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement between the City and State of Colorado for a Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Housing Grant Agreement for down payment and temporary rental assistance. Item 9C is Resolution 2015-96, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and State of Colorado Department of Public Safety Division of Criminal Justice for a grant to prevent child abuse. Item 9D is Resolution 2015-97, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and State of Colorado Department of Public Safety Division of Criminal Justice for grant funding for domestic and dating violence prevention and education. Item 9E is Resolution 2015-98, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and State of Colorado Department of Public Safety Division of Criminal Justice for a grant to provide a coordinated response and assistance to victims of domestic violence crimes. Item 9F is Resolution 2015-99, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and State of Colorado Department of Public Safety of Homeland Security and Emergency Management for an emergency management performance grant. Item 9G is Resolution 2015-100, adopting the City of Longmont Emergency Operations Plan, and staff does not have a need to pull any of these items.
Councilmember Santos.
Unless other members of council have anything to remove, I would move the consent agenda. Oh,
I would like to actually pull item C just for a brief discussion.
Okay. Councilmember Santos?
okay.
Would you like to
Thank you,
move?
Mayor Coombs. I would move the consent agenda minus 9C, correct, Councilmember Christensen? Okay.
All right, let's vote on that. That passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, the item pulled was 9C, and that is Resolution 2015-96, the Justice Grant to prevent child abuse. And Kim Hurd is here to address any questions you might have.
Councilmember Christensen, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, I guess because I would like the audience to understand the depth of this problem. How many cases of child abuse do we have in the city of Longmont per year?
This particular grant is for child sex assault prevention.
Oh, okay.
This is year 3 of this grant. So it's a prevention and education grant for child sex assault prevention. It's called Project Pinwheel.
So it's an education grant.
It's mostly an education grant and a website that we've set up. So when you say child abuse, I can't give you exact numbers.
Okay, because that's what it says to
I
prevent
know,
child abuse.
and I don't know how.
All right.
That's not whatever. But that is what it is. It's year 3 of a 4-year federal grant that we've been working on through the Longmont Police Department. And I didn't say my name's Kim Hurd, and I'm a project coordinator for the Longmont Ending Violence Initiative over at the police department.
The reason I sort of want to bring this up is because 80% of the women who are homeless because of domestic abuse, and I would say that many of those children are also homeless because there's abuse going on with them. So,
and there is a large correlation between domestic violence and child sex assault too. So,
but I was curious about the numbers, but that's irrelevant to this case then, I guess.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Christensen, we can actually provide you with that information, so we'll get with staff so you can have it.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move Resolution 2015-96.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. And that passes 7-0.
Your next item of business is presentation of the 2016 Human Services Agency funding recommendations, and Karen will make this presentation.
I use this device.
Thank you. My little tag.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Karen Roney. I'm the Community Services Director for the city. And sitting behind me is Charles Stearns, who is the chair of the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. And I tried to get him to make this presentation, but he didn't. But Charles is here to answer any questions that you might have. Plus, he would like to make some comments toward the end of the presentation. We, as Council knows, and Councilmember Peck is learning, is that on an annual basis, the City Council has allocated funds in its general fund budget to fund contracts for nonprofit human service agencies that address some basic human needs in our community. That amount is, it has been up 1.6% of the general fund revenues, and we did make a modification in the financial policies for the 2016 budget, and I have it in a slide ahead of this, but I think it's 2.04 or 07% of the general fund revenues is it's the same amount, but it's a little bit over $1 million that we allocate, and I'll get to that. I got ahead of myself. I'll get to that slide with the specifics. But anyhow, how we allocate those funds is that we do have we did conduct a needs assessment for the Longmont community in 2013. That was a 3-year needs assessment, which Council encouraged us to undertake so that we could help ensure that the dollars that we did have available, that we were investing in the most critical human service needs in our community. What we find is there are lots of different agencies in the community. They do incredible things in our community, and Council's desire was that we maybe try to go less broad and with our funding, and really to focus our funding on those kinds of needs and issues that are the most critical to our community. So that's what we started in 2013, and our funding recommendations and approach is the same in 2016 as it has been for the last 2 years. We weight the funding again based on the community priorities, and so those priorities that were of greater need in our community were weighted more heavily. So we have basically 2 high priority impact areas. The one has to do with more of a prevention angle, which is really helping to focus on children and youth and preparing them for success. So we know that when we start young, we help our youngest residents to basically be ready to learn when they enter kindergarten and have everything they need for a healthy start in life. Really launches them into onto a path of success as adults. So what we did is we ended up having 2 high priority categories, one on the prevention angle and one that supports basic needs, which will be in the next slide. So the service area priorities for children and youth have to do with making sure that there is early child care and quality child care education to help address at-risk behaviors for kids in their teens, to also work on parent education and involvement, and just to help with the ongoing healthy growth and development of children and youth in our community. The second high impact area, high priority area, has to do with meeting the basic needs of our residents. And so at the same time that we wanted to focus on prevention, we also did not want to pull the safety net rug out from people who are really struggling in our community. So you can see there in the slide what are the service areas in under meeting the basic needs of our residents. The medium priority has to do with increasing self-reliance for adults, and the areas that we fund and consider have to do with helping people to continue to be able to live independently, whether they are still maybe working their way out of poverty or whether they're on fixed incomes and need assistance. And then our lowest priority had to do with building a safer community, and the areas that we consider funding there, you can see, have to do with safe neighborhoods, addressing violence, interpersonal violence, and helping with reentry back into the community of at-risk populations. So basically, we allocate 80% of the funding that we have available to those 2 Tier 1 areas, then 20% of the funding to the second tier, and then the increment of funding between what was available in 2015 and what's available in 2016 was targeted for that Tier 3 level. I want to talk a little bit about the set-asides, and we talked about this earlier in the budget process, is for the past several years, we have been setting aside a portion of that Human Service Agency funding for 2 efforts. One was the Child Care Certificate Program, which is basically funding that helped to bridge the gap between what child care providers would receive from the state for providing child care to low-income families and what their actual market rate was. So there was a gap between what they could get reimbursed for and what the actual cost was, and by the city filling that gap, it afforded all families who were involved in the child care assistance program to be able to have the full range of affordable and quality child care. So they did not have to accept a lesser level of care because they didn't have enough money in that reimbursement. So that helped really with equity and access to child care, quality child care. And that was $150,000 that we have set aside, actually, I think, for the past 10 plus years. So what has happened is a couple of years ago, the state legislature made some changes to the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, and they through those changes they were able to lower the cost to families because they do have to pay a portion of the child care. It also created greater access, and starting in July of 2016, it is increasing its reimbursement rate to those providers. For Longmont providers, what it means is that starting in July of 2016, the reimbursement that those providers receive from the state will actually be at market rate for those providers. So the good news is that meant that we no longer had to set aside $150,000 for the certificate program. But since it doesn't begin until till July of 2016, we allocated $50,000 to pay for roughly a half year of that gap funding. So then we had a discussion, and this is around the same time that the council was considering and talking about affordable housing and starting to hear the reports back from the consultants about our need for affordable housing in this community. And so, again, I think what you heard during the budget process is that the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board decided to, instead of rolling that set aside back into the competitive process, is that it would continue to hold out $150,000 and contribute that toward and help to leverage the other dollars that have been designated in the general fund to help address our affordable housing challenges in Longmont. So for 2016, because $50,000 still needs to help support those families who are receiving child care assistance until they can, until July of 2015, we allocated $100,000 for the Affordable Housing Fund. And in 2017, if we still need the funding, which we probably will, then we would consider that probably would be the full $150,000 that would make that contribution. And I think the reason that that the advisory board felt strongly about that is many of the agencies that we hear from talk about the struggles that their clients are having accessing affordable housing, whether they're in the safe shelter and they are trying to move on into a violence-free life. They have to find housing. So folks that are in some of the emergency shelters or getting assistance through the R Center, and maybe they're stabilizing their lives, they just aren't able to find any housing. And so we felt strongly enough with the need is so great on a community level that it made sense to continue setting aside dollars and looking at that on an annual basis to make sure that if the Affordable Housing Fund still needed that to meet our goals, which we will still be working on and developing next year in 2016, that we felt that was a good use for those dollars at this point in time. So the process is we release applications. We received applications from 46 agencies. They applied for 48 programs. The Housing and Human Services Advisory Board organizes site visit teams. So we visit approximately 10 to 12 agencies each year. We also, the staff does desk audits on those agencies, which basically means we look at a lot of information that we don't ask for in the application process. So we look at their articles of incorporation, review board minutes. We really kind of look at the how they are managed as an agency that goes into a little more detail. So So that's what we also do in making these recommendations. We hold hearings with the agencies to ask questions about their proposals. Then all of the advisory board members do a ranking of each of those 46 applications, and we get together and we look at our scores, our evaluation scores, and we make some recommendations that we're presenting to council this evening about how to invest those dollars. And so what we have before you is a recommendation to fund 32 agencies and 33 programs. So we certainly did end up allocating 80% of the funding for those two Tier 3 areas, but as you can see, it wasn't an equal balance between the basic needs and agencies that are working with youth and children and youth. And it really is it's a product of the incredible need that we are seeing in this community in terms of housing issues, in terms of homelessness, in terms of the need for mental health care. And we just felt that those needs were so significant and something that our community, we hear in our community that that 60% of the funds are being recommended to meet basic needs. And then you can see how the rest of those allocations are presented there. So we have in your packet a list of the agencies, and so for those agencies that are working with children and youth, you can see the allocation here, and I'm just going to go through those unless you have. I'll just work through them unless you have any questions. For the basic needs. This is, again, how we have these allocated, and I want to make a comment here that I'm going to address a little bit later in the presentation, is that we did have 3 agencies that ended up being disqualified for funding because they did not show for their agency hearing, and again, we make that clear in the process, is that if you first miss the deadline and don't get your application in on time, that disqualifies you. If you miss your hearing, that disqualifies you. And so we did have 3 agencies that missed the hearing. So you'll see on here that Agape Family Services was one of those agencies. They do operate a warming center in Longmont for people that are homeless and need shelter in the winter months. And so I'm going to come back to that. But I just wanted to point that out, and that will make sense when I come back to my additional comments here. So this is a continued list of those agencies that we funded that meet basic needs in our community. So we did make some increases to the Our Center, to Safe Shelter, to the Mental Health Center. Again, those are some of the more critical needs that we have been seeing in our community. So you can see here are the recommendations for those Tier 2 agencies that are working on self-reliance and independence for adults. There's the other list. And then for the Tier 3 funding, we funded 3 agencies, and I want to point out that the Children First of the Rockies, it's a pretty significant increase for that particular agency, and the reason being is that in 2016, that agency will be needing to find a different location for their services. So for the past several years, probably about 10 years, that agency has resided in the Meeker Neighborhood Center, which is a city-owned building. We charge them, no rent. So their request to the city in the past has been pretty small because they were getting a huge contribution in terms of not having to pay for rent and utilities in that building, and because they also, the Children First, received a Office of Violence Against Women grant that came through the city about 3 years ago, and part of that grant was to help assess their operations. And one of the things that the organization that the grant, that the Office on Violence Against Women indicated is that that we had to look for a new location for Children First the Rockies. They do provide the kind of the safe parent exchange program. So those are families, parents that that are in conflict. And so they, because they're in such conflict, that in order to, to change, have their children stay with one parent from another parent, then they do the safe exchange at this location. This is also the location where we fund a Head Start program, and so the Office on Violence Against Women said it's really not in our best interest to move forward and have children and the Children First of the Rockies program operating in the same building. So they indicated if this agency wanted the rest of their grant money, which would support their ongoing operations, that they really had to look at a new location. So that's the reason, and that's why we did go ahead and increase their amount of funding more significantly than some of the other agencies. So back to Agape. So what the advisory board was aware of is that homelessness is a concern of this community, and our concern was that if we didn't at least look at the impact of not funding Agape's services in 2016, we need to understand what that was going to mean for our community. So we had a subcommittee of our advisory board. We met with the homeless service providers, and including Agape, to try to understand, could Agape continue to provide services in 2016? And if not, might there be other agencies that could step in and help with the management or the provision of those emergency sheltering services in Longmont in 2016? So we are still working on that. So we did have a preliminary conversation at last week's advisory board meeting, and so it looks like that we have a path moving forward that we think we will be able to negotiate with one of our currently funded agencies to address the issue of homeless warming center services in Longmont in 2016. So we will be coming back with what our recommendation is probably in December or in January once we work that out. But we did feel compelled that we needed to figure out how to address that need. Even though Agape was now eligible in 2016 for funding, they certainly can come back in 2017.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. And I know I read the council communication. I would hope that recommendation would come before, whoever it is, to come back hopefully prior to the end of the year, since going into we're still in the winter months until some April and sometimes May. So I just encourage the board just to as diligently as they possibly can get us that recommendation so we can fund whoever is going to do that.
You bet, Councilmember Santos and Mayor and Council, is that is certainly our interest too. So we have a path. We plan to make a decision at our December 14th meeting. So, yeah. So.
Do we know why Agape missed their meeting?
Well, it could be a variety. Technology. Not on. They received the letter, and it either fell off of or never made it onto those wonderful electronic calendars. Yeah. So anyhow, so we are working on we're working to make sure that the service gets gets provided. So the other thing that I would indicate to help a little bit is that you might have seen or you probably read in the newspaper or you saw that Veterans Helping Veterans Now it didn't get any funding from the city in 2016. It has closed its doors. and so it's no longer providing service here in Longmont. We had 3 months of their contract remaining, and so which was about $3,300. And so one of the other actions that the advisory board took at their meeting in November was to add those funds into and amend Agape's contract for 2015, so that they would have some additional money moving into this sheltering season. So,
Councilmember Peck?
On Agape's, when you find another agency to take over the warming houses, Agape had a pretty good network of 3 churches, and I would hate for them to fall off of the network because they're not being utilized this winter. So whoever takes it over, if they could continue to use those network services so they don't get dropped off, would be great.
Great. That is indeed, I think, what the advisory board, what we're looking at, trying to maintain that network.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess, first of all, this question is to know what comments and questions to do now versus later. How many slides do you have to go?
See, I'm on closing.
This is the last one.
Closing. Well.
And I know Charles wants to make some statements. So I think, so may I just make a couple of comments, and then I think we just will swing it right open to questions, and Charles can help me answer those. So.
Can you turn your mic down?
I was going to wait. She's on closing. Well, I have a quick question regarding the last topic. So they're meeting on the 14th. Our next council meeting is the 15th, so we're going to be able to have that at the December 15th meeting, that recommendation? Because the next week is the 22nd. We do not have a meeting, and the next one after that's the 29th. So I'm worried about timeline.
Yeah, and we do have some work. I understand, and we are too. So I think that's why we looked at that $3,300 that can be moved into 2016. So we looked at the bridge. So as soon as we make that recommendation, we will be back to you. So
that's my only concern, as Councilmember Peck said. I just don't want to lose that. Those services for warming.
And I think to just also clarify, when we did speak with Agape, they aren't in a position where they need to shut their doors or anything. So they do have money. And in fact, they weren't even, they really couldn't say for sure, how much longer that their revenues would sustain them. But certainly we got the impression that through the remainder of this, these winter months that end in April, that was probably not going to be a concern. The $3,300 that we will be allocating to them, they will get that in December, and so that can also carry them forward. So, and they're working very hard on securing additional dollars, which they really need to do anyhow for their ongoing sustainability as an agency. But we hope that we try to address those.
Thank you.
So I'll just close out if that's all right, Mayor. So the one thing that we will be looking at, talking about in the very near future is really what's the future of our collaborative funding application model with the other funders, with the three governments and United Way. So most of you know that, or you might know that Foothills United Way has really changed up their funding process. So they really have moved away from some of the traditional agency funding like we are still doing with the other 3 governmental entities. And so we don't know what the future will be if they will continue to be involved in that collaborative application process. So anyhow, we'll be talking about that in the next couple of months and see what impact that has or not on our collaborative application. The other thing that's happening is that Longmont is now the only agency, only government that is funding every year. Boulder County, basically City of Boulder, does multi-year funding. And Boulder County this year also kind of moved into that arena, which basically, obviously they can't obligate the money more than 1 year in advance, but they did not require agencies to complete another application. So if they were funded in 2015 and they were meeting all of their objectives, they were, managing their grant properly, then what the county did is just negotiated with those agencies for a new contract in 2016 rather than having them go through this process again. So I think what the advisory board will also be looking at is if the city of Longmont, or if this is a recommendation that we might be bringing back to the council early next year, if we want to consider some type of an effort where we're not evaluating applications every year. So that's on the table and it's on our radar. We don't know what we're going to do, but we wanted to give council a heads up. I think the other thing is that in 2016, the city council did fund money for us to update our human service needs assessment. And so we will be starting that process very soon. And so it also could be just as it was in 2013. We might have a different process and methodology of funding needs in our community that's a result of this updated needs assessment. So that will also be coming forward. And so I will open it up to questions and then invite Charles for any closing comments.
Councilmember Peck.
This is just for my own curiosity's sake. When you were talking about the certificates for the child care, did that include centers and licensed daycare homes, or was it only for licensed centers for child care?
They were licensed providers, so they could be
either or.
Yes, they just had to be licensed.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. So now that this is why I asked you before. So going back to the topic of agape for a second. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is the city charter actually prohibits us from just donating to nonprofits. So this really isn't a conversation about donating. It's about entering into contracts and agreements for an exchange of service, that we give them money, they provide a service that the city requires. As an attorney, a lot of times in my career, I've stood before a judge and I say, I have no idea why it didn't get on my calendar. And judges are typically, quick to forgive and understand that mistakes happen. And I can understand that we certainly don't want to open the floodgates and just say, hey, look, you missed the deadline, you don't show up. We certainly don't, we don't want to condone that. But at the same time, I think that when the Hours Center closed down its warming center, my understanding is Agape really stepped up, right?
Well, they were both, they were certainly both providing the service and
Now one's gone and Agape continued,
correct,
right? So I guess I look at it as that would be a unique situation where, not all contracts with nonprofits are equal in my eyes. And I think that we've heard comments from the local citizens about homeless shelter, for example. Well, I think that donating money to the Boulder homeless shelter, the $55,000 there, or even giving money to Agape for their services fulfills that need. And so I know that they might have the money, they might not need the money right now, but nevertheless, I think our city benefits from the service they provide, and I would be all for ignoring the fact that they missed their deadline and reaching a hand out to them rather than insisting that they come to us. That's just my thought. So I would encourage the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board to do that as quickly as possible, because I would be anxious to vote for some type of monetary contribution or agreement similar to last year, even though they missed their appointment or their interview.
And Mayor Pro Tem Bagley and Mayor and Council. So that's a tricky one for sure. And we had 3 agencies that missed their deadlines.
And I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is. We would reach out just like we were to say, you know what, we want to reach out and hire so and so or an RFP or whatever the process is.
So we have reached out to them. We are in conversation with them, and absolutely. I would say the advisory board is certainly shares the sentiment of the need for the service, which is why we did not allocate. In fact, we set aside more money than what Agape received in 2015. So I think the advisory board was very sensitive to the need, and they are very interested in finding a way to fill that need and still maintain the integrity of our process. And I certainly understand what you're saying, and council gets to make the decisions about how to allocate. We certainly do understand that. But I just want you to know that we're trying to find a way to maintain the integrity of our process and to make sure that people who need emergency shelter in Longmont in 2016 have it.
Full faith and confidence in you. Thank you. And then I guess the other question I have is, so you've got the Wild Plum Center, and then you've got TLC. And I know TLC is a very popular program here in town, and I am close colleagues and friends with several of their board members. But my understanding is that the money for the Wild Plum Center is going specifically earmarked for low-income families, correct?
Families at poverty level, yes, or below. Mm-hmm.
Whereas TLC, my understanding is, although they're a nonprofit, only a portion of what the child care services they provide are for poverty, children in poverty. And so I would be interested to kind of earmark whatever funds we give them for low-income families, because I do know that their business model includes, it seems to be, maybe I'm wrong, but in talking with the folks at TLC, it seems that percentage that they cater, the percentage catering towards low-income families tends to be, on the lower end. Is my assumption correct?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor and Council. So certainly our, what we target are funds that help people with lower incomes, and so certainly they use their money to provide scholarships, and so that low-income families can be able to access the TLC Learning Center.
So it's specifically for that
right,
purpose.
and that's part of their contract and their scope of work, and they have to report out those numbers to us.
Okay.
So it is. I mean, so many child care providers do provide a range of service for families of different incomes. Okay. So, but yes, that is a requirement for TLC.
All right, you're resolving all my concerns. And then last but not least, Hope, great organization in what they do, but I know that in the past we've had some problems with the area of town that they're distributing food to the homeless, which has caused some problems for downtown businesses and whatnot. So my question is, as we're moving forward, is now an opportune time to discuss with them about, how that process could make life easier for downtown residents and the city in general? Has conversations occurred with Hope about that?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So we regularly have conversations, Mayor Pro Tem and Council and Mayor. So we are in ongoing conversation with the homeless providers. So whether it's through the first response team, the housing opportunities team, so I think Hope is aware. They continue to try to be good providers of service and be good to their neighbors. So a couple of things. Hope is going through a strategic planning process right now, and I think you might have been invited, or you saw a link to take a survey. So they really are looking at what is their future going forward. And so I'm sure they're hearing comments like this. They certainly are aware of it. Hope has taken the lead on a new locker program. So they are working with one of the churches in central Longmont to basically have lockers available on site at one of the churches, where folks who are homeless have a place to store their items during the day. So again, they are looking at different ways to provide assistance and certainly to have not have as much impact in the various neighborhoods.
Well, last but not least, thank you very much for what you do. I only sat on that board for 2 years, but having seen the process and now seeing that the process is vastly improved, thank you very much to everybody who sits on that board And I think this is a phenomenal way to spend our money contracting in this way. So thank you.
So just to clarify, since I didn't have it on my slide, is that the total amount of funding we had available in 2016 is $1,124,992, which is 2.07% of the general fund revenues. And really the change in that financial policy is that general fund revenues prior had a variety of revenues in there, so like grant revenues and those kinds of things. So we modified it for 2016, and the general fund revenues that support this particular program are from property, sales and use tax, cigarette tax, and from franchises.
And maybe someday for marijuana tax.
Just don't know, but that's what. So I would, unless council has other questions, I would invite Charles Cerns, our chair of our Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. But first I'll answer another question. Sorry.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. In looking at attachment 1, it says that Agape Family Services requested $60,000 in 2016. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How did they request $60,000 if they missed their deadline?
Oh, no. So they made their application deadline. It was their public hearing deadline. They didn't show up for their hearing. They did submit an application.
They did submit
Yes.
an application.
Yes.
And they are our highest priority area.
They are one of the highest price. They are in the tier 1 for sure.
And I guess I don't understand if they requested $60,000 and now they're telling you that they don't need any money for this year. I'm confused about that, I guess.
So I don't know whether they didn't say to us they didn't need money. I think they were when we talked with them. I think they are uncertain. So they were uncertain about what. How much revenue they would still be able to maintain. They have a grant writer that they're working with. So we did not get a clear answer to our question about, what is your revenue picture look like for 2016?
And I do think this is a perfect example of why perhaps we ought to look at multi-year funding, because this is a huge need, and because they didn't write it on their calendar, now for them not to be able to provide that service would be a shame.
Councilmember Peck.
Going back to Agape, could you suggest a workaround to whoever you chose to handle the services, that perhaps they could subcontract Agape for the season? Because for example, if you gave more money to, let's say, the Hour Center, that perhaps they could use some of that money to subcontract Agape and let them continue the good work that they do without just going away for the year.
So we have a variety of, we're exploring a variety of options.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And we look forward to coming back with our recommended solutions.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Karen. The staff for Health and Human Services are a very impressive group of people, very dedicated, and it's a pleasure to work with them. And the whole board is really a bunch of incredibly thoughtful people, and it's been wonderful to not only see how people really carefully evaluate all these agencies, but also evaluate their evaluation process and have cleaned up the forms and the questions asked, and continue to do that. That's what helps make any kind of business or service better, if you continually reevaluate how effective you are. I wanted to clarify something for Brian, but maybe I'm wrong, about Wild Plum Center and TLC. I think originally the difference was that the Wild Plum Center was for low-income people, and the emphasis on TLC, which was originally Tiny Tim Center, and various other reiterations maybe, was for disabled children. And so and that has nothing to do with income really, but that isn't quite so much the same anymore. They don't just deal with disabled children, but that is their historical difference, and so there is a slightly different emphasis there.
I want to make sure you remember that.
Yeah.
Correct. I think, TLC, formerly Tiny Tim Center, for years has really operated on a model of having serving a population of typically developing children and children with special needs, and that has been a 60-40 ratio, I believe. So certainly that is the model that they work with, and find a lot of value of basically integrating the children in service.
Well, I think I can speak from first-time experience of how sometimes an administrative error can end up punishing the innocent along with the guilty, where everybody loses and everybody gets punished and nobody wins. And I don't think that that's what the citizens of Longmont want us to do with the warming center. So we need to figure out a solution. So.
Give TLC and Plum City
Yeah. All right.
So I will invite Charles Stearns
Okay.
for closing comments.
She wanted me to give this presentation. Mr. Mayor and council members, just a few comments, if I may.
Sure.
As you've heard from Ms. Roney, presentation, the needs are great for many Longmont residents. The resources are limited. The Housing and Social Services Advisory Board is a group of 9 volunteers who have given advice and insights to you as how to best use the allocated city resources to meet those most in need. Councilmember Christensen and city staff have been most helpful in assisting in this process. I'm very proud to be on this committee, and I'm very proud of what Longmont does to help those people in need. And I'd like to acknowledge the fact that the city residents have agreed to have some of their tax dollars go to those most in need. This helps all of our residents feel valued in our community. I'd like to thank the advisory board for their many hours of effort to give you advice and direction as to how these funds could be dispersed. I'd also like to recognize the many agencies and volunteers who give those in need in our community hope, direction, and dignity while facing incredible circumstances. Our agency support in this area is incredible, and the people helping are even more incredible. I would hope you would agree that this money is an investment in our community. The money spent improves the quality of life for many in our community, be it for a preschooler, for a senior citizen, for a family, or for someone just battling the demands of life. Basic needs are addressed. Many more children are primed for success. Self-reliance is fostered, and our community is safer through these efforts. Thank you. Thank you very much for your willingness to attend to these needs for our community members. And if you have any questions of me or further,
thank you, Charles. Any further questions? No. Well, we appreciate your good work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I do want to also bring one item to your attention. So as you noticed in the presentation, they put $100,000 toward the affordable housing piece. If council will remember, when we went through the budget conversations, we talked about $250,000 from the ongoing fund, $175,000 from property tax, and then $75,000 from the Human Service Agency, equating to $500,000. Because of the $100,000, we're actually going to have $525,000 in the affordable housing funds. I wanted to point that out in the process because that's slightly different than what we talked about in the budget.
Awesome. More is better.
And we would be looking for a motion this evening to either approve or something else, these recommendations.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Thank you for all the hard work. Please thank the board. I'm assuming from all 7 of us. So I would move approve option 1, which is approve the HHSAB recommendations for allocating 2016 city funding to human service agencies.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Some discussion about that $525,000 allocation to Affordable Housing Fund. We need to make sure that makes it into new construction of units so that it increases our inventory of affordable housing rather than get distributed out through other means of assistance. So I just want to make sure that we are working on that from that perspective.
Go ahead, Harold, if you want to.
I was going to say we are working on that, and that's going to come as we bring back the additional items, and Kathy has more information to report.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion. It's been seconded. Let's vote. And that passes 7-0. Thank you. So now is time for final call, public invited to be heard. Is there anybody from the public that'd like to speak at final call, public invited to be heard? All right. Now it's time for mayor and council comments. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. As we know, Thanksgiving's coming up soon, and my business of the week can help you with that hostess gift. Wyatt's Wet Goods at 1250 South Hover Road, right next to what will be the Whole Foods store, sells wine and spirits, and that makes an excellent hostess gift as you travel for your Thanksgiving dinner. Remember, Wyatt's Wet Goods, 1250 Hover.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank the city for the excellent race they put on this last weekend, the Turkey Trot race. There was a 2-mile race. There was a 10K race. It was perfect weather. It was perfectly organized. I think the city just did a fantastic job. I mean, 2,200 people came out, families. I think it's just awesome to see, a city that encourages, families to be out there with their kids racing in strollers and whatnot. I was a little disappointed that I didn't see anything in it in the newspaper, but, 2,200 people is a pretty good-sized race for this city, and I thought the city employees and the volunteers just did a fantastic job in putting on a great event, so thank you, City of Longmont. Councilmember Christensen.
I want to thank everybody who participated in the Veterans Day Parade this last week. It was a good turnout, and we all thought it was going to be a terribly cold day, but it actually turned out to be a lovely day, and I think everybody was happy to see everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to remind everybody that the Longmont Trojans won their first playoff game, and their second one is actually at Denver South, so they have to play out of town, but then after that, they'll come back to Longmont for another game, hopefully. So they're doing awesome. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Just happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Hope if you leave or are traveling, safe travels. We will not be here next Tuesday, unless I'm missing something. So again, happy Thanksgiving and safe travels to everyone.
Thank you. Okay, City Manager, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City Attorney, any remarks?
Mayor and Council, one housekeeping item.
Sure.
Last week, ordinances 61 regarding easement vacations and ordinance 62 regarding water rebates were published with an incorrect public hearing date. So the correct public hearing date is December 1st, as was read into the record at the meeting. Staff has arranged to republish the ordinances in conformance with the charter with the correct public hearing date so that there's no confusion. We think that the risk is pretty minimal, but wanted to let you and the public know that of that error and that it was corrected.
Okay. Thank you. Well, this meeting is adjourned.
Enjoy the holiday, folks.